Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. Tonight I'm going to start working on the bottom of, I'm not sure what we call it, but the back end of the 32 5-window. The bottom here is all rotted off. I've got to basically make some sheet metal to go on here. What we have is the 32 Ford Roadster over here that I can make a pattern off of, or a close pattern. It's not exactly the same. On the 5-window, the Roadster flares out a little bit more, but it's the same basic shape. So what I've done to start is I took a piece of paper and I basically drew it over the line to basically get a template. Not sure yet whether I'm going to do this in one piece or two pieces. So rather complex piece. I don't have the big power hammer with the shrinking dies, so I'm going to have to do some of this by hand. But just on a sanity check, the pattern for the Roadster does transfer over to the 5-window. So more to come. This is the beginning. I'll shoot this episode in several different steps. Love to make it in one piece, but I'm thinking it's going to be one piece here and one piece of the back, and then I'll weld it together. Hi, we're back. I went to work after the camera lady went on the house, and what I did, I took my template, I cut it out like this, and I drew a pattern on 18 gauge steel. So that's my pattern. The next step is to basically bead roll these edges here. So over here in the bead roller, I have a pattern I made for the other side. So basically it's the same as what we did before. I was using the sharp edge and the soft edge. The soft edge is this piece here, so I started from this side, and then I worked it through the bead roller all the way around, and then I did that for both of those, as you can see here. So the intention is to try and make this from one piece, and I think I'm on the right track. So I took a piece just like this, and I took it and I put it up against the car to look at where I have to basically bend it. One of the things I mentioned before is I don't have shrinking dies like on a power hammer or something, so I decided I would try and stretch the other areas to form it. So what I wound up with after I went on to my new planishing hammer, and then I used it to basically form it back and forth like this and around, and I was able to work it around it so that I formed this piece here so far. So this is how far I've gone so far. That's just from taking what we saw there behind the camera lady that's bead rolled. I just kept working the edges here to try and form it. This panel here is shaped this way, so I worked it this way. This panel here has a slight convex to it. I flipped it around. I did the same thing until I got the basic shape. So right now, I am very, very close. I may have to move this line over yet, but I won't do anything until I actually cut the back of it. I still have to fold the edges over across the bottom here, and I have to fold the edges over there. So we'll continue with this video. I will form those edges. I'll show you how I do them, and then I'll clean it up, and then I'm going to weld it in place. So see you soon. Hi, here we are about an hour and a half or so later. What I've done is I've bent the flange over on the bottom. I've bent the flange on the side. In order to bend the flange over on the bottom here, what I did, I've got all kinds of little pieces of pipes and mandrels and stuff that I use. I stuck this piece of pipe in here in my vise, and I drew a line and I hammered it over the edge. Once I had it bent over, of course, because it was a curved radius, it was rippled. I then had to flatten it out, and then I went over here onto the shrinker. I've got a small shrinker here where I put it in, and then I brought the flange back into the shape that I needed it. So once I had that flattened and the shape in place, the next step was to actually cut away the original part of the body. And I just did that bit by bit by bit until I more or less had it in place. It's not perfect just yet. I've got a little bit more tweaking to do here, a little more bending. The body line over here that came down the back of the car, I actually had to re-roll it because it was slightly off. You can see there's where my original line is right there. I had to flatten it out and then re-roll it right here. So once I got that body line where I wanted it, I had to dolly out some of the old part of the car as well. Then I took it over to the metal brake over here. And then that's where I was able to bend this flange here that goes up alongside of the trunk. But it too has a convex shape to it. So in order to determine this convex shape here, I have a sheet metal replacement piece right here. This actually goes down behind the trunk lid. So in order to get that shape right, again, I went over to the shrinker. It's pretty much lined up now. Might have to touch it a little bit more. But as you can see, after I bent it on the brake, I then had to do successive little shrinks in order to get the right shape here. So now I'm basically at the stage where I'm going to tweak it just a little bit more, make sure everything lines up perfectly, then I'll tack weld it in place and I'll work my way through. So we'll tack that video onto this and that'll be it. Hi, so here we are. I have the rear corner patch panel. I had to look up what it actually was called. I knew what I had to fix, but the rear corner patch panel is welded in place. I got a little bit of dolly work left to do. Everything is ground. The one thing I did get into trouble with on the back is because this is an old body that's rusty and had lots of lead. It was 3/4 of a body that we're going to attach to the front half of a sedan cowl. I've got some bronze solder and a little bit of lead here, so I'm going to have to make another little piece here. Not uncommon with something like what we're working with. I basically clamped on the rear lower panel for the deck lid just to make sure everything is square. But that's it. I didn't go through the technique of how I welded it on, but essentially when you're welding a panel on, basically you weld a spot, 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 let it cool in between, in between, in between. Never run like a bead because it's just going to distort all the bits. Maybe at some point I'll just do a little demonstration on how to weld a panel without warping it and letting it cool down. But that's our rear corner patch panel for the 32 Ford 5 window. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please shoot us a message. Other than that, everybody have a great weekend. Take care. Thank you.